Okay, well, welcome to our second gathering for this particular course. Uh, what we're going to be looking at this evening or this morning, wherever you happen to be, um, is the requirements for the next couple of weeks. And first thing we want to do is just check that if you've sent any emails in, I just want to make sure that you've received an answer. If you haven't, please let us know now. Just jump in anytime. Um, as I mentioned, I haven't got the first recording processed yet, but I will before Monday, and I'll post it up with this one as well. And the link will be put on edX to the YouTube videos. One of the things that's going to help us or help you with your development is a simple step, and that's coming up with a name for your device. It's a good idea to have a name because it gives a focus, it gives you something to focus on, it makes it easy to explain to other people. Um, and it's usually a fairly big part of the marketing as well. So I suggest trying to get a name, put it in the discussion boards, get some feedback on what you think what people think that name is like. And it does, again, help you focus. And a lot of what we'll be talking about tonight is about focus and how to uh, keep the scope of your project within a manageable level. One of the major problems people run across in developing new products and working on prototypes is the dreaded scope creep. And you've probably all heard the term, but you start working on something and you think, oh, this feature would be nice and this feature would be nice. And it ends up you spend all of your time adding features and you never actually get anything out to market. It's much better to get something workable and usable that meets your absolute minimum requirements for a viable product, and then work on creating advances in it or improvements to it further down the track. That's also a reason that we look at our pricing. And again, we're going to be looking at how you manage pricing here and how that should fit in with your development plan. Right, so this fortnight, we're going to be looking at working on the Canvanizer. If you haven't used Canvanizer before, it's a fairly simple tool. I've got an example coming up in a second. Uh, the reason we work on Canvanizer is it helps you get down the main ideas and the things you need to be aware of as you're designing a prototype ready for production. It's a living document, so you don't write it once and then forget it. It's very useful in keeping things up to date and making changes, keeping track of changes, and keeping you focused. Again, I'll mention that staying focused on what you're trying to develop and coming up with that minimum viable product that you hope to have at the end. So the Canvanizer has a section for the problem. This is the top three problems, or should be the top three problems that your IoT device is going to address. So what are the three main things that you will be addressing within your development? We look at customer segments. Okay, so who is the target audience for your solution? So you know who you're going to sell to or who you're going to provide to. And one of the key ones is a unique value proposition. This is what makes your device unique. Why is it different from things other people have done? We can use one of the examples of a prize-winning development that was done in, I think, our first course, or might have been our second course. The gentleman in Colombo developed a safety monitor for shower heads. In his country, the heater for the hot water is actually sitting up in the shower head itself. It just has wires running back to a power point, and it's either on or it's off. He developed a system that would monitor the temperature, adjust the cold water flow to, or sorry, just the water flow to keep the hot water at a given temperature. And it could report that back, or you could set it up through your mobile phone. The unique value proposition on that was none of the other heaters had this safety control where it wouldn't exceed a certain temperature. If it reached that temperature, it would cut off. If it went over that temperature, it would cut off. But it used the water flow to maintain a constant safe temperature. So that's a kind of unique value proposition you should be looking at, something that you can do in your solution that nobody else can. You need to propose a solution, the top 3 features of your IoT device. 3 is just a good number. So we're looking at a feature set and how you're actually going to get your IoT device out to customers. One of the nice things we've got nowadays is a very small world. You or I sitting in our local country can sell worldwide through any of the online platforms. We can do it ourselves. And it doesn't really matter what size your organization is. You can compete on a global scale just by using the internet to sell. In fact, we were talking to a fairly large company or large value company that develops sensors for monitoring pipe erosion and corrosion in the oil and petroleum industry. They're a fairly small company, even though they do have very high value turnover in the back blocks of Norway or Sweden. Was it Norway, Sebastian?
Norway.
Yeah, in Norway. But they sell globally. And their biggest market is actually in Australia. They use almost none of their product in their own country. So having a good way to create paths to get to your customers is a crucial part of your development. Cost structure, we will go into this in a lot more detail. I won't talk too much on it actually here because it's important and we need to get to it in detail. But it's working out the type of costs you've incurred in developing your system, how you would end up pricing a device depending very much on the market you're aiming for. And as I said, we'll cover this in more detail in a sec. Revenue streams, where you're going to get the money to develop your idea. There's lots of different ways of doing this. You can look at GoFundMe pages. That's worked in a lot of cases. It's not worked in a lot of cases. I spent $25,000 on a 3D printer on a startup that would not only 3D print the plastic, but it would print the electronics as well. They got the initial money, we got our printer, then they went broke, and now we can't get any of the parts for it. So it doesn't always work. But you've got to be able to work out your revenue streams and whether they're going to be worth your while. In many cases, people will go to venture capitalists. These are quite often called vulture capitalists because they really do want their money back and more. So when you sell a share of your development to a venture capitalist, quite often they'll be asking for more than you'd be best giving. So be very much aware of that. But there are lots of other revenue streams that you can look at for funding. Traditional things like banks, but there's also angel investors and other methods as well. Again, something really important and very, very important in this instance when you're looking at developing your prototype, and that is to get some key metrics and milestones so that you can measure whether you're going to be successful or not successful in your development. And if you're not going to be successful, that is not necessarily a bad thing. There's a new way of thinking nowadays that uses the term fail fast, fail often. And this works very well in certain conditions. The idea behind it is that you come up with an idea, you try it, you do a very quick or rapid prototyping process, you find it's going to work or it's not going to work. And if it's not going to work, you just drop it and move on to the next thing. And you keep doing that until you have something that is going to be successful. So fail fast, fail often is actually not a bad design methodology. But it is very important to set those milestones so you know whether you're on track, whether you're going to complete this particular unit in the MicroMasters, and ensure that you've got some measurable points to say, I'm progressing well, I need to catch up, I'm ahead of schedule, and those milestones will help you do that. The last point is the unfair advantage. This is the key advantage of your solution. What can't easily be replicated? We have a problem with certain, we could say countries, I guess, that don't take copyright law particularly seriously. And it means that your idea may be able to be copied fairly easily. So you need to find something within your product that you can use in promotion or use in gathering your resources and funding to continue your project that will allow you to remain unique. So looking at an example of this Canvanizer, we can see we've got the problem, solution, all of those titles that I've mentioned earlier. And we're using that snore stop that we used in IoT1 and other other parts of the IoT course. So we need a simple problem statement. What are we trying to solve? In this case, we want a snorer's partner to be able to sleep, so we need something to stop their partner from snoring. It's a very simple, straightforward, this is a problem, this is what we're going to solve. Doesn't go into too much detail, doesn't try to do everything for everyone. It is the problem we are trying to solve, and very focused. Again, it's to try and get that limitation on scope creep. Our solution is going to be a sensor that activates an alarm to alert a snorer to roll over. So what are we going to do to solve this problem? In very broad terms, have a few things in the solution that you're going to be working on. Don't make the list too long, don't make it too short either if you can. We need a unique value proposition, and in this case, it's a snore stop is non-invasive. Neither partner needs to wear anything on their person because we're using audio to pick it up, and it's nice and easy to set up. So that's our unique value proposition. We have an unfair advantage. A unique combination of sensor and app would be difficult to replicate. It wouldn't actually, but we need to come up with something here. We've got customer segments that we would address, channels for the finding those potential customers. And in this case, it's pharmacies, medical equipment, different websites. For each of your solutions, you would probably have a different sort of channel. Is it suitable to go onto a mass market Amazon type website, or is it something you should focus on a particular market? Are you going to sell direct to the customer, or are you going to go through a wholesale to other retailers? Again, critically important that you have those channels worked out because it will affect your costing. It'll affect your costing quite dramatically. If we look at selling through wholesalers, you reduce your cost by not having to have the infrastructure set up to sell direct to the customers. You don't have to have stores of your product in multiple locations. It could just be in a single location. But you need to give the retailer a cut of your profit. And of course, they don't handle the warranties. You still have to handle warranties, so you've got other expenses there. So working out your channels is critically important to your costing, and to a lesser extent, your unique value proposition as well. Some key metrics here, you can copy these or create your own. One of the things we'd like to see is people to have a prototype. However, and this came up this morning, which we should also mention in a sec, because there's people with so many different skills in this course, we don't necessarily expect everyone will produce a piece of hardware or some software, or both, or a combination. If you're a business person without a great deal of technical expertise, having a detailed business plan is sufficient for this course. As long as you can show that you've picked up enough knowledge that you can actually communicate with the engineers and software developers that would do the building of the device for you. If you don't have the business acumen, then working with a greater priority on the prototype development may be better. We had one person who was talking about, because of the type of thing they're trying to work on, it's not going to be possible for them to build a prototype, so they are going to build a simulation of their system because the infrastructure is too large. So these key metrics, when you're setting these up, make sure they fit what the skill set is, and that that you can actually map to them in the context of this course. So we don't expect anyone to make their first $1 million in this course. If you do, we would like 10%. Thank you. Kidding. All right. And finally, of course, the cost structure. And as I said, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but there are many, many hidden costs that could be involved in your design. You may or may not wish to recover some of those costs. But as I said, it's a big area, and we should talk more detail a bit later on that. And of course, what revenue streams that you're looking at. And there's just a few examples there. Okay, so we will also be looking at doing a market research and costing plan. Oh, that's something I didn't mention as well. Somewhere here. the Canvanizer. Where was it? I had it somewhere. The Canvanizer, Sebastian, is worth 10% of the final mark, is it?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, it's 10% of the marks.
It was on the slide there somewhere, but I will mention it again because put some thought into it. Do it as well as you can, but it is a living document and it does contribute to your overall marks. So the market research and costing plan is something that you will also be developing in the next few weeks. Sebastian can tell us all the due dates towards the end of this if you like. The purpose of this is to consolidate your own ideas. Again, it is kind of a living document. You'll come up with the research and costing plan, which you can then use in your final report, which is marked at the end of the course. So it can contribute significantly to that as well. The key decision you'll need to make before you can complete this plan is determining your business structure and the demand for your products and services. And again, we'll talk further on different ways or different methods you have for working out that costing. You need to know the industry and environment which you're going to operate. That is critically important. Knowing what your competitors are, what the overall market value is, how you can get into that market, and general information about the industry that you're going to be working with. One way of doing this is to look through general internet search, looking for products which would be similar. But a very good place to start is in the patents office. Each country usually has its own patent office. I've got the link here for the Australian one. So that's a good place to start. It's free and open. You can get the patents, or at least the beginnings of the patents, quite easily there. And Google also has a patent site, which again is reasonably good and gives you mostly US patents, but has a good range of them there. So that's a fairly good place to start. But you do need to really work on your environment that you're going to be selling into. So when you're doing your industry analysis, there's several things that you should be looking at specifically. They are the political, economic, social, the technology that you're in, and the industry. So politically, it is important in some areas that you understand what the political situation is. There's many legal factors. Using the example of data, in Australia, there are many, many laws on where you can store data depending on the industry you're in. So if you're working in the health industry, you've got a health application or health IoT device that you've developed, it is illegal for Australian health practitioners to store that information outside of Australia. So privacy laws insist that medical records and many, many other records are kept in a local country. One of the big problems with data is that, or any cloud system, is that if your data is stored in a foreign country, that data becomes covered under the laws of the country that data resides in, not the country where it originated from. And that, particularly at the moment, can cause some significant issues. There's a lot of unrest around the place and a lot of fairly aggro politicians. So we've got to be very careful about the legalities and the political situation of where we do things. There are many other regulations as well, which can affect what you're doing and how you can do it. So again, look at the regulations for that particular solution that you're working on. Radio type regulations are important. Political stability is also very important. I wouldn't want to be working on a development in Romania at the moment. I do actually know some people that are writing software that are based in Romania. They're still managing, Ukraine, not Romania. I had Romania on the mind today for some other reason. Ukraine software developers are still managing to do their business, but not very easily. So you really want to be aware of the political stability in the area. Economic, that's fairly obvious, really. So the economic factors that can affect your business. Taxation laws, one large one for us in Australia is exchange rates. As this Australian dollar goes up and down, it affects what we do rather dramatically. Most of our exports, particularly from our state, are mining and agriculture. And as the exchange rate changes, we have booms and busts. So when the dollar is low, things are actually booming because our iron ore, gold, and everything else is cheaper. When the dollar is strong, our limited manufacturing that we have actually does quite a lot better. So you need to keep an eye on that economic flow. In many countries, labour can be a big problem, either a labour shortage or the cost of labour. In developed countries, labour can be a very, very significant part of your overall cost, as it is in Australia. In some places, it's not necessarily that large an issue. Okay, social and cultural factors that affect your business. Population is a good one, particularly how dense the population is. And I don't mean that by how clever they are, but how many people you have in a given area. So, for example, if you're trying to roll out something that requires a wired infrastructure, and all of the people that you would be selling your product to live in high-rise apartment towers, your costs are going to be very low. But if you're in somewhere like Australia where houses can be hundreds of metres apart, you're not going to get many customers per kilometre of cable. So looking at population densities is one area that you should look. The demographics is another. Do you have an aging population? If you do, and your product is aimed at aged care or normal or other geriatric type applications, having an aging population is great. If your product is aimed at the youth market, then having an aging population is not so good. So look at the demographics. How wealthy are people? Does it fit their particular usage patterns? Really understanding what the people in the area that you're going to be selling into are like. Technology factors that can affect your business. Well, there's lots advancements, developments that happen. The IoT is moving very, very rapidly. There's lots of changes in standardization, communication protocols. The power of the little microcontrollers that we're using, it's a dramatic change in that over time. Just going back to my earlier days in computing, we'd use little microcomputers that ran at 1 megahertz, could do 1 million instructions per second. What sort of speed are we running at now with a cheap little STM32, Savash?
Oh my God, it's in megahertz, is it?
Yeah, 25, 50 megahertz.
25? Yeah, 25, yeah.
And that little Z80 processor that I used probably cost around $80 or $90, which was about a week's wages. And now you buy an STM32 for how many cents?
Just a couple of dollars, maybe. Yeah.
So always bear in mind that things like that will have an impact. You're trying to sell a processing device that has a certain amount of power. You know that cost is going to go down. Your competitors are going to start reducing their cost, and how do you factor that in? And that's important to keep an eye on. And of course, probably one of the most critical ones is the industry. What are the current and future trends that's going to affect that industry? I mentioned in Australia, we're very much a mining and agriculture country. In fact, we're slowly digging up the entire nation and shipping it off to other countries a boatload at a time. That's okay, but the old way of mining, where you just, to quote our head of school of the WA School of Mines, mining is no longer making big rocks into little rocks. It's all about the data involved in mining. So if you want an example of where future trends are heading, the mining industry is a very good one. It's no longer just digging really big holes in the ground and crushing it up and turning it into something else. It's all about the data, the efficiency, being able to do things with less impact on the environment, the sustainability. And to do that, you need to be a high-tech company. So mining is changing dramatically. No longer just the high-vis and hard hat brigade, but it's lots of little geeks like Savash and myself working in dark rooms, playing with data and electronics. And it's important that you keep that in mind. So if we're looking at developing something for the mining industry, you've got to be heading down that data path, the connectivity path, the sensing area, not the traditional dig a hole and ship it overseas. So looking at your competitor analysis that you'll need to do, this is also very important to understand what you're up against. So we'd like you to create something along these lines, find some competitors for your idea. If there aren't any competitors, great, amazing, but try and find someone who's close. Look at their establishment date. That's important because track record's also very important. It's how long they've been in the business, and if they're still in the business, it means they've been successful, and can give you a few ideas of what they did right and what they've done wrong. What product is similar to yours? How much of the market share have they got? And there's some really good examples of this in the computing industry. If we look at Apple and Microsoft as prime examples, nobody thought Apple would survive because they had such a small market share. 95% of all desktop computers ran Windows. So they had a very small market share. Apple had a very small market share. And if you were developing a great new operating system and you want to get into this market, how would you do it? Everybody has that IBM, Microsoft type PC. So all the software is developed for that particular platform. A tiny niche is Apple. How would you break into that market? That's where you've got to have your unique value proposition. If you're going for a niche market or you're trying to break into a market that's got well-established competitors, you really need to play on that unique value that you're going to give to your customers. And to understand that, you need to know what your competitors' unique value proposition is. With Microsoft, we could look at the vast array of software that was available, extremely low cost. It could run in many, many different manufacturers' PCs. So what was Apple's strength? Higher quality, easier to use, and Steve Jobs was a really good con man. I actually like Apple, but I didn't like the original Apple. So really look at their strengths so that you know what you're up against, but also look at their weaknesses. So again, we can look at the Microsoft Apple situation. The weakness of Apple is their price. They have what the industry calls an Apple tax. You put an Apple logo on something and you immediately add another zero to the price. It doesn't mean it costs any more to make. It just means it's Apple, therefore it's good, therefore it's at a premium price. The weakness of Microsoft software is it's rubbish. Sorry, I'm showing my bias again. The weakness of the Microsoft operating system, it was relatively hard to use. It was a little bit unstable compared to the competitors, such as Unix and the Apple systems. But that gives you some place to start. You know where you've got to attack to get yourself into the market and establish some market share. And your market share, niche markets are very good rather than mass market because there'll be less competition. Okay, the pricing bit. This is one that I actually think is really important because Sebastian and I do a lot of work in the philanthropic space. But working in the philanthropic space doesn't mean you're a not-for-profit, or as I like to say, not for massive loss, because you still need money. You still need to cover overheads, and there's lots of things you have to build into your costing to ensure that you can stay in business, providing that philanthropic service that you want to be able to provide. With a pricing strategy, we could use two extremes as an example of this. And this doesn't mean one's good and one's bad. They're both very good, and they're both ways people work. The first one is the philanthropic. Here we need to get a service out to a group of users. Could be something like a system for remote training of guide dogs, which Sebastian and I are working on. Allows the guide dog trainers to work from the head office and through VR and 360-degree cameras and a whole bunch of sensors attached to the dog, can train a dog that happens to be 1,000 miles away. It saves all that travel time, means people can be more efficient, and it's a great cost saver for the guide dog industry. Now, we don't really want to make any money from this because we wouldn't anyway, being for a charity. But that doesn't mean we price things so that we're losing money. We need to be able to continue the development of the product. We need to be able to work on warranty repairs and returns. We need to be able to offer support to the people who purchase our system. We need to be able to offer training, and we've got overheads with building things, being able to maintain and our development, particularly the development cost, and we want to keep it up to date. So we need to have money to keep paying engineers, to keep building things and keep improving things. So therefore, our costing is based not just on the physical equipment we need to buy, put together, and then ship out. We need to include in their cost for maintenance, warranty returns, something to keep the company, well, it's not even a company, but something to keep the organisation running, and to fund the further development and improvement of the system. However, we're willing to take a loss on a lot of the other things, like our time in developing it, like the initial prototyping things that we bought. If you go to the other extreme, where you want to do something on a purely commercial basis, and this is how most of the world works, you really have to look at all of your costs that are involved. So you need to look at your training time, the time you spent in this course and the money you spent in this course. You try and recruit that over the entire run of the product that you're producing. You need to cover your overheads, you need to make a profit, you need to offer your warranties. You'll probably have to pay commission to salesmen or a salary to salesmen, and you need to go much wider in what you're looking at for your cost recovery. You then amortize that over the expected run of the product, and that adds a value on top of each of the devices you're going to sell. There's a good link or a good article, if you follow the link on this page, that explains each one of these sort of pricing models or pricing strategies. Worth having a look at and tying that into the market that you've identified in the previous steps, and where it fits in the commercial world. But it is important to remember there are lots and lots of costs that you do need to cover, maybe not recoup, but you do need to cover if you want to keep your product in production and up to date for any extended period of time. Okay, next thing we need to do is a SWOT analysis. Now, most people are familiar with these: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's one of the first things any investor in your idea would want to see. They want to see what makes your product good. Right, I think the Apple, yeah, we're using Apple here again. The strengths of Apple: awesome interfaces. Apple is head and shoulders above the others. Great brand image. All right, so they're the strengths. The weaknesses: limited range of products, forcing users to switch to the latest product by reducing support for previous models. Doesn't go well with some people, and relatively high prices. Opportunities are things that you are in a position to take advantage of. In the case of Apple, demand for smartphones and tablets is growing, so Apple can jump on that. iPhones and iPads, common operating environments, good seamless integration, and that's moving into the laptops as well. The threats in Apple's case: people like Samsung, strange people like Google Pixel phones, Ace of Ash. Yes.
Yes.
So there's a lot of market competition as well. So they're threats. But really getting a good understanding of what is good, what you need to improve, what chances of increasing your market share are, and what is threatening your market share is critically important to this new device that you're trying to put together. You should be very realistic in this and use it again as a living document, which will help you build your final report due at the end of the course. So for week 4, this is the last little bit we need to do. A little bit different to what we have here, but I wanted to leave it in just to show you what we had before and how we can make it work for this particular group. Joined a topic team. Now, the idea was that topic teams was because in the first couple of runs of this course, we had over 100 students in each one. It was difficult to have everyone in one group. So we created topic teams. And the reason we wanted people working in teams is to build on that ability to get knowledge from other people who may have strengths in areas that you don't. So it's great if you find someone who's a business person or perhaps somebody who has some hardware knowledge that you can bounce ideas off, ask for a little bit of help from, and work together. And it's really greater than the sum of the parts. So two people working, coming from different views, you can achieve a lot more than you can with just one person on their own or two people working on their own. Discussion boards are really good for doing this. I strongly encourage everyone to get involved in the discussion boards, let people know what you're up to, what you're doing, what challenges you have. Savash and I, mostly Savash, will be checking in on these quite often. So we'd like to be able to communicate as well in there. Decide which web conference group you would like to join. Well, that's actually gone. And the reason it's here is we have actually cancelled the morning one, again, because we find that having a number of people together in a single session is much, much better than small numbers or just the lesser numbers in multiple sessions. So because we only had 4 people along this morning, I think, was it Savash?
Yeah, about 4.
We thought it's best if we could bring those 4 people into the, what is for us, evening session, this one, just to get that critical mass of people talking together. Because that's, as I've said before, is what we really want from this this capstone. It's not much, there's not much in the way of material for you to go through on the edX page. It's really about us getting together and assisting you through with the development of your IoT concept. All right, so getting everyone together in this is important. We do have some product development videos we'd like you to have a read through to try and look at how you're going to start building up those reports, which will focus your development and populate your Canvanizer template. And there it is, because it's a first grade assignment worth 10% of the overall mark. Okay, so that's really all we wanted to talk at you for. What we'd like to do now is actually hear from you, how you're going. If you have any questions, now is the time. So I'll just stop sharing the screen.
I'll just bring up a couple of points before we get to the questions, Ian. If you wanted to take a note at some of the due dates we have for our assignments. So the first one, the Canvanizer, that's going to be due on 1st of May at 11:59 p.m. and that's GMT time. And all of the assignments are going to be due at 11:59 p.m. GMT time. The next one, the IoT presentation, that's where you record a short video of yourself. It can be a PowerPoint presentation. It can be you talking to a camera. And it's just we want to get you talking about your project as a pitch, mini pitch video. So that one is due on 15th of May. Then we have the market research assignment, 29th of May, and the final report on 26th of June. And I would say since we have the market research and then the final project report due later on, we would highly recommend that you keep that Canvanizer as a live document, because as you keep working on the project, doing a bit of research and adding to it, that's going to be a very good resource to use for all of these other report submissions. Just I thought I'd bring that up.
Yep, that's good. So has anyone got any questions?
Yeah, so yeah, please feel free to either use that raise a hand button, ask a question, or just type it in the chat.
It's got something they want to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to discuss my project. Can we do that?
You're a bit quiet there.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's a bit better. Yep.
Okay. I had 2 questions. One is regarding the course guideline and one is regarding my project. So I emailed Saivash earlier. I'll be away for a month. So I'll be missing 2 of the deadlines. Can I finish those deadline? Like, can I submit those submissions after I come?
Yes, so as I said, Ankit, you can submit them a bit later, but you have to keep in mind that because this course is such a live interaction between us and you, and it will run up to a point. So once the final due date of the course passes, we won't have access to the course anymore to be able to update your grades on edX. So the final submission that's due is on 26th of June, and we'll run the course in 2 more weeks after that. So as long as you submit everything before we finish the course, because we put it as 26th of June, the deadline for the final report, and that gives us 2 weeks to finish all the marking and providing feedback to you. So if you make those submissions, if you can make the time to submit everything before that date, that should be okay. So you can email the submissions directly to us. Otherwise, unfortunately, because the course will close, we won't be able to go back and update your grade once the duration of the course passes.
Right. Okay. I was concerned about the 15th May deadline. Okay.
Right.
I'll be submit that after 2nd of June.
That's okay.
Okay. My second question is regarding my project. So I'm thinking of creating a device which will help a caretaker to a patient to know that my patient needs me, needs the caretaker to help me to defecate or urinate. Okay. So the kind of sensor I'm thinking is right now patient can click some button and it will notify the caretaker is what I'm thinking. But I'm also thinking on the line that it would be good if I can put some sensor and detect that the user, that the patient want to urinate or defecate, that there is a urge. So there I'm facing a challenge. I'm not able to think how can we sense that. So anyone in this group has any idea or suggestion?
So is it that you want to automatically detect whether there is a need for going to the bathroom?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes.
So I couldn't quite hear all of that. What were you trying to sense there, Savash?
So it's looking at a patient and
Yeah.
figuring out when they need to urinate or defecate. So is it so that you're thinking that would inform the nurse and they'll have to go and take the patient there?
So
Yeah.
this is trying to do it without the patient activating anything?
Is that the case, Ankit?
Yeah, the patient can be at the hospital or at home also.
Yeah,
Was that
that'd be hard.
Maybe there can be some vibration sensor near this leg.
Possibly. There could be a way. It would require some sensors around the body, but I'm thinking that if we used ultrasonic in the bladder area, that would tell us. And for the other, probably we could look at microphones and the stomach noises. That could go through a machine learning process to pick up the gut sounds that could be signaling. It's certainly worth a look to see if there's a relationship between the gut sound and defecation.
So so are you thinking that it would be more useful for patients who say have a movement disability and then they couldn't communicate the need to go to the bathroom?
Probably.
Yes.
Sorry, you go on, Ankit.
Actually, how I got this idea is in my home only there is a patient and the caretaker was not in the room where the patient is. And he could not tell the caretaker that he needs the help. And the room was messed up.
I see.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm
The
thinking
patient is not able to shout also. Like he's not able to tell himself that he needs.
Yeah, I'd certainly be looking at the gut noise and ultrasonic, looking for bladder contents.
One more thing that might be interesting to look at, kind of looking at a bit more advanced technology, looking at multi-millimeter wave cameras, so wave cameras. I don't know if they've done anything in that area because I know it does. The signals do penetrate the skin, so they've gotten heart rate and breathing out of it. I wonder
Yeah.
if they could do a bit of,
Have we still got that at work?
yeah, I think the TELUS team is using it. We have 3 students kind of experimenting with that.
All right. So Water might pay. We can have a look at that because they're not going to be easy to get the
Hmm.
sub-millimeter cameras, IR cameras.
Right.
Um, we can run a couple of tests on that
Hmm.
at work and let you know if that's
Yeah.
got potential. And if it does, we can give you the images
Hmm.
to work with.
Right.
That will be grateful.
Still reckon the gut noise is a good way to go.
Yeah.
Cheap and
Yeah.
easy.
Probably, yeah, I would say probably the gut noises. Because I'm sure, because we are thinking of using that idea for animals, so
Yeah.
monitoring dog behavior. So there are some of those kind of stomach rumblings that we can pick up with a microphone that can be potential signs of a stomach problem. Um, so wonder if we can do something similar with the digital camera.
Yeah, well, let's have a shot with the camera.
Yeah, let's see
Yeah.
it.
We'll let you know.
Hmm.
Actually, we'll put it up on the discussion boards.
Hmm.
So we can get it back before the 2 weeks.
Sure.
Mahmoud's asking something as well.
Yes. Go ahead, Mahmoud.
Yes. Hi, first I want to thank you for this session and the previous models. It was really fantastic, and I want to take the opportunity to thank you about it. So I am more interested about renewable energy, and especially for the microgrid, and I'm thinking to make my project about it. So is it must to be like to be around a specific device, or I can make my project like provide a complete solution, like some kind of business model, you can say. So is it possible to be like it must be like a specific device?
No, it doesn't have to be a specific device. As I mentioned a bit earlier, because of the range of abilities of people in the course, we need to be fairly flexible in what we expect. So if you're looking at a business model, going into detail on that, as long as you're in the situation where you've got the capability of communicating with the engineers or software developers, and you can write the specifications of what you expect as the output, that is the sort of thing we're after as well. So writing the technical specifications for your solution.
Okay, great. Okay, that's it. Thank you a lot.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else got anything they would like to jump in and say? Yes, Harun.
I wanted to ask, how flexible are we with the ideas that we come up during the Scaminizer template once we submit it, for example, afterwards, if we have a change of heart or let's say some specific details that we would like to change, how flexible are we in that? Or are we, sorry?
Very, very flexible because it is a living document. We expect it to change. It's like, this is really like a mini Master of Philosophy or Doctorate of Philosophy. If you knew the answer when you started, then it's not really worth doing. Right? So we expect people to start off some way, and then they'll find as they learn more about it, they'll start to drift off in a certain direction. Right? So what you initially write is not necessarily what you'll end up with and end up doing, which is why we said it's a living document. As you find better things or things that don't work, you're going to need to change. So what you submit initially is to make sure that you've got a fairly good plan in your head. You know where to start, you know where you're heading, but that doesn't mean that can be your only course. All right, so changes
Understood.
are good if there's reason for them.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any questions?
Well, while we're waiting, if you do have questions, please use the IoT Capstone email address to contact us. We've got lots of people that are able to help in lots of different areas. I was mentioning this morning, we've got someone who's looking at a lot of spatial information. So mapping, time to travel, using maps. And we've got Dr. McMeekin, David McMeekin, who is a software engineer but specializes in spatial systems. We've got a guy in algorithms, Dr. Hannes Herman. We've got a guru in Python programming in Dr. Valerie Maxfield. We've got Yiffy, who's just really, really good at lots of things, particularly AI. He's a clever little fellow, is young Yiffy. Savash and I Savash more on the embedded systems and communications and sensors and that sort of stuff. So really, we've got a lot of people who can help you, and this is what we're trying to do in this course, is to facilitate you in your development of a solution to an IoT problem. So we do want you to contact us, honestly, really.
And one of the things that we're going to start doing from the next seminar onward is we'll have mini discussions on a particular relevant topic. So, for example, next one, I'll be covering sensors. So it's going to be general discussion about sensors and some example projects that we're doing at Keratin to give you an idea of how do we start a IoT type project in this area? Where do we starting from the initial idea, sticky taping some off-the-shelf components together, then going down the path of designing a PCB and manufacturing it. We'll talk also a little bit about energy harvesting, because that's an interesting topic to bring up when we're talking about sensors. And then we'll have discussions about actual PCB manufacturing. We have discussions about spatial sciences, a bit about cloud computing and big data, I believe. So lots of relevant topics that hopefully as we go through these, and the idea isn't to just keep giving you guys lectures, as they're designed to entice a conversation. So yeah, hopefully we'll get started on
When we're
that.
talking about the sensors in the next one, the idea is it should trigger some ideas that on sensors you could use in your product. And one of the really nice things about sensors, or the challenging things about sensors, is when you find an application area to use a sensor for not what it was designed for. So finding new ways of using existing sensors. A classic example of this is measuring salinity in water. We don't measure it by measuring the salt, we measure the conductivity of the water. So we're using a conductivity sensor to actually work out the salinity. It's a fairly straightforward, well-known one, but there's lots of other instances where you do this. And it's a very interesting area to play in. So hopefully we'll get a few interesting ideas back on that with Sebast's informative chat on sensors next fortnight.